The winter that found Ethan Hale did not announce itself with drama. It arrived quietly, the way regret does, layer by layer, night after night, until the mountains around his cabin forgot their own color, and the world narrowed to white, gray, and the low breath of the wind. Snow pressed against the windows like a patient listener. Inside, the cabin smelled of old pine, burnt coffee, and the faint metallic memory of fire gone cold. Ethan sat with his back to the hearth, boots still on, hands resting on his knees, as if waiting for orders that would never come. He had chosen this place because nothing followed him here. No one asked what he'd done or what he'd failed to do. The town down the mountain spoke his name rarely, and when it did, it spoke it carefully, the way people talk about storms they survived but do not wish to remember. A retired Navy SEAL, they said, quiet, keeps to himself, came back wrong. Ethan did not correct them. He had learned that silence was lighter to carry than explanation. Most mornings, he woke before dawn, not because he needed to, but because his body did not believe in rest anymore. He split wood even when the pile was full. He boiled water even when he wasn't thirsty. He lived as if usefulness might one day forgive him. On this morning, the cold felt sharper, the kind that crept into the bones and refused to leave. The sky was low and heavy, promising more snow. Ethan stared at it from the doorway, then shut the door as if the world outside had said something unkind. It was later, when the light had thinned into a dull, colorless afternoon, that he heard it. Not a sound that demanded attention, just a break in the wind's rhythm. A pause, then something fragile, almost imagined, a breath that didn't belong to the mountain. Ethan froze, his hand still wrapped around a chipped mug. He told himself it was nothing. The cold plays tricks, he thought. So does loneliness. He took a step, then another, until he stood by the door again, listening with the discipline of a man trained to hear danger in silence. There it was again, softer this time, a sound not asking for help, only admitting existence. Ethan opened the door. The cold rushed in, sharp and punishing, but it wasn't what held his gaze. Near the edge of the porch, half swallowed by snow, was a shape the color of ash and shadow. A puppy, German shepherd, he realized distantly, curled in on itself, ribs faintly visible beneath damp fur. Its ears were too big for its head, folded back not in fear, but in surrender. Pale eyes lifted slowly, meeting Ethan's without accusation. The puppy did not whimper again. It simply watched him, as if deciding whether the world was worth one last breath. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest, an old, unwelcome pressure. He crouched, the cold biting through his jeans, and extended a hand without touching. The puppy trembled, but did not move away. Snow clung to its whiskers. One paw was raw, the skin cracked from ice. Ethan swallowed. He had seen worse injuries. He had caused some of them. This was small, he told himself. Manageable. And yet his hand hovered, uncertain. Like a man standing at the edge of a memory, he did not trust himself to survive. I can't, he said aloud, the words fogging the air. They were not meant for the puppy. They were meant for everything that came after saving something. The wind answered for him, pushing harder, filling the space between them with cold urgency. Ethan exhaled through his nose, a quiet sound of defeat. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around the puppy in one swift motion, before doubt could harden into refusal. The puppy let out a breath, just one, and leaned into the fabric as if it had been waiting for permission. Inside the cabin, Ethan set the bundle down near the fire, not too close. He fetched an old towel, laid it beneath the small body, then stepped back. He did not speak. He did not kneel. He stood with his arms crossed, watching the rise and fall of the puppy's chest, as if counting seconds in a familiar, terrible way. The fire crackled softly, thawing ice from fur, turning snow into dark puddles on the floor. "You're not staying," Ethan said after a while. His voice was calm, practiced. "I'll get you through the night. That's all." The puppy's eyes closed. It did not argue. Night fell early, the kind of night that erased distance and made the cabin feel like the last light left in the world. Ethan sat at the small table, pretending to read, his attention drifting back to the quiet shape by the fire. He brought a bowl of water, slid it closer with his boot. The puppy stirred, drank weakly, then rested its chin on the rim as if exhausted by the effort. Ethan looked away, jaw tight. He had learned long ago that watching something trust you was dangerous. Sleep came in fragments. Each time Ethan woke, he checked the fire, checked the door, checked the small, breathing proof that he had already broken his promise. Just before dawn, the puppy shifted closer to the warmth, pressing against the leg of the chair where Ethan slept upright. The contact was light, almost accidental. Ethan did not move. He stared at the wall, eyes burning, and let it happen. In the morning, the storm had settled into a steady hush. Ethan drove into town for supplies he did not strictly need, leaving the puppy wrapped in a blanket by the fire. He told himself it was temporary. Everything in his life was temporary. The town greeted him with its usual restraint. A few nods. A few glances that lingered too long. At the general store, old Silas Boone leaned on the counter, eyes sharp with curiosity that pretended to be concern. "Cold one," Silas said. "Heard something last night. Animals don't usually make it up your way." Ethan paid in cash, kept his gaze low. "Guess I'm lucky," he replied. Silas smiled thinly. "Luck's a strange thing. Best not get attached to it." From behind the shelves, Mara Whitlock watched the exchange without comment. She slid an extra pack of bandages into Ethan's bag when Silas turned away, her fingers brushing the edge of the counter instead of his hand. Ethan noticed. He always noticed small mercies. He just didn't know what to do with them. Back at the cabin, the puppy lifted its head when the door opened. Its tail did not wag. It simply watched him with the same quiet attention as before, as if memorizing the shape of a man who might disappear. Ethan set the supplies down, knelt, and cleaned the cracked paw with careful, practiced movements. The puppy flinched once, then held still. Trust, Ethan realized, was not loud. It was a choice made in pain. When he finished, he sat back on his heels. The fire snapped softly. Outside, snow fell in slow, deliberate spirals. Ethan opened his mouth, then closed it again. Names carried weight. Names stayed. He rested a hand briefly on the puppy's head instead, a gesture so small it barely counted as courage. For the first time in a long while, the cabin felt less like a shelter and more like a place waiting to be lived in. Ethan stood, added another log to the fire, and let the moment settle without demanding meaning from it. Some things, he knew now, did not arrive to be explained. They arrived simply to be kept warm through the night. The days that followed did not announce a change, but they carried it all the same. Morning light slipped through the frost-laced windows, and Ethan found himself measuring time differently, not by the ache in his joints or the hours since sleep, but by the small sounds the puppy made as it learned the rhythms of the cabin. A scrape of paw against wood, a sigh before sleep, the quiet certainty of breathing that filled spaces Ethan had kept empty on purpose. He named the dog without ceremony. The word came to him one evening as the fire burned low and the snow pressed close to the walls, muting the world beyond them. "Ghost," he said, not as a claim but as recognition. The puppy lifted its head, ears tilting, and something passed between them that did not require agreement. Ghost did not rush to him. He simply stayed. Ethan understood that kind of loyalty, the kind that asked nothing and offered everything. They healed together in increments too small to boast about. Ghost's paw knit itself back into usefulness, the skin toughening against the cold. Ethan's hand steadied as he bandaged and cleaned, the old precision returning without the old urgency. He spoke more, though not much. Sometimes he read aloud, testing his voice against the walls, letting it grow familiar again. Ghost listened as if the words mattered, even when they were only weather reports or forgotten passages from books Ethan no longer remembered buying. Mar came by under practical pretenses. Once with a sack of grain, she claimed the store had overordered. Another time with a coil of rope and a reminder that winter did not forgive carelessness. She knelt to Ghost first, letting him sniff her gloves, her movements slow and unassuming. Ethan noticed how she never asked questions that demanded answers. She sat at the table, accepted coffee without praise or complaint, and spoke of small things. The way the river sounded under ice, the town's endless arguments about nothing at all. When she left, she lingered by the door, as if trusting the moment to decide its own ending. The town noticed the change before Ethan did. Silas Boone saw the dog at his heel one afternoon and said nothing, which, in its way, was an apology. Others offered nods that lasted a second longer than before. No one spoke of the past. They spoke instead of weather, of roads, of the way Ghost held himself, like something meant to protect, rather than be protected. Ethan let their words pass through him. He had learned that dignity did not arrive with declarations. It settled in quietly, like snow on branches that had learned not to break. The storm came hard and sudden, the kind that erased paths and blurred edges until direction itself became a guess. Ethan had gone out to secure the shed, trusting Ghost to stay close. The wind rose faster than expected, slicing the air into white confusion. When Ethan turned back, Ghost was gone. Panic did not announce itself with noise. It hollowed him out, left him moving on instinct alone. He called the name once, then again, his voice torn thin by the wind. Each step into the storm felt like a debt he was finally willing to pay. He found Ghost near the ravine, trapped in a drift, eyes bright with fear he had never shown before. Ethan went to him without thinking, his body remembering what his mind had tried to forget. He lifted the dog, felt the familiar weight of something that mattered, and turned back toward the cabin, the world reduced to breath and balance, and the refusal to let go. The storm raged around them, but it did not own that moment. Ethan did. When they reached the cabin, Ethan collapsed to the floor, Ghost pressed against his chest, both of them shaking. The fire was low, the room dark, but life held. Ethan laughed then, a short, broken sound that startled him more than the storm had. He rested his forehead against Ghost's and stayed there until the trembling passed. Morning arrived softened, as if the mountain itself had chosen mercy. Word traveled fast. Silas came by with extra wood. Mara arrived with soup still warm from her stove. No one spoke of heroics. They spoke of survival, of shared warmth, of the way some winters teach you what you are capable of keeping. In the weeks that followed, the cabin changed. Not in ways that could be measured, but in the way light lingered longer, in the way the door stayed open a moment before closing. Ethan walked into town with Ghost at his side and felt no urge to disappear. Mara's hand brushed his once, briefly, as she passed him a cup. He did not pull away. Spring hinted at itself in the slow retreat of ice, in the sound of water moving again beneath the land. Ethan stood on the porch one evening, Ghost seated at his feet, and watched the sky turn from steel to pale blue. He thought of the man he had been when winter found him, and of the quiet way the cold had been answered, not with force, but with presence. If you've ever felt the world narrow around you, if you've ever believed that what you carry disqualifies you from warmth, remember this. Sometimes redemption does not arrive as forgiveness. Sometimes it arrives as a living thing that refuses to let you stay alone. If this story found a place in you, stay with us. Subscribe, and let the next tale remind you that even the coldest seasons leave room for grace.